last week, President Macron talked about an important initiative that you and him would launch. Any news on that?
No, we're talking about something that will be very positive for the world if we do it. We'll see if we do it or not. Well, I don't want to talk. It's a private thing, but it will become public if we decide to do it. But positive. Our relationship with the president, our relationship with France is, I think extraordinary, very good, probably as good as it's ever been.
We'll get to the issue of crypto assets later in the debate. That has, I think the hype is a bit behind us, but I'm sure that it will come back. Repeat
what Stephen just said, which I agree with. We see a tremendous change. And it started with fintechs, but now it's not only at the margin, so to say, it's really at the core of the financial system. It must be clear-cut. Innovation brings progress, and it comes from the private sector.
In order to stay in the market and at the top of the curve, you have changed the organization of the Banque de France. Could you say us a few words about
that? I could describe many things, but we created a lab, which is 2 blocks away, as a matter of fact, Rue Réaumur, so you are invited there. We opened a Fintech forum, and we will organize this year a public event open to all of you. And if I can give 2 other very short examples. First, can I invite you to the Nuit des Idées? Sorry to say it in French. Stephen, you understand French, as you live in Paris. But it will be on Thursday night about AR and finance in the Banque de France. And one very important other change is within our payments organization. We will probably speak about the revolution in payments and crypto assets, but this is for us a decisive challenge.
So if you don't know where to spend your nights, there is a new idea for you. Second question, and it's for you, Mr. Governor. In what way could stablecoins be a game changer within the financial system? And I would add a second question. Should we implement central bank digital currency? And if so, how? So first, game changer with stablecoins.
I will start with the technology, perhaps, which is blockchain. We strongly believe in blockchain. We were in the Banque de France among the first central banks in the Eurosystem to develop a blockchain on SEPA identifiers called Madre, and I stress it today, Nicolas, we will have other uses of this blockchain with banks in this year. Having said that, turning to your point, could I stress that from my viewpoint, there is no such thing as a cryptocurrency, to use a word you didn't use, but which is very often used. And can I explain that? Because it's a link between your 2 questions. Please. There is on one side crypto assets, which are private, with probably 2 generations we see. There could be a 3rd generation in the future. The first one is a Bitcoin and the like. Very speculative. It can be used as a speculative investment with all its risk, but it's a possible investment. And the 2nd generation are the so-called stable coins, which you mentioned, which could probably have more use cases as payment means, but voluntary payment means. So we will see. There was a Libra project. It takes a bit more time than expected. We will see. What we said is that, and we said it in the G7 under the French presidency, we will now say it in the G20, that in any case, such stable coins have to comply with the existing rules, especially on anti-money laundering. If not, there would be a negative regulatory arbitrage. This is a very good example of the possible convergence between openness, innovation, and safety. On the other side, as I said, there is a currency, which is a common good. It's not always publicly issued, but it's always publicly guaranteed. And there we have the question of central bank digital currency. Let me stress that it's still an open question, and many countries are studying it in Northern Europe, in China, and we will study it in the Eurosystem.
Sweden, particularly.
It raises many questions. It can have many different uses, be it wholesale or retail. On our part at the Banque de France, as I announced 1 month ago, we will launch experimentations, first focused on the wholesale usages, and we will have a public call for projects in March. Please note the date for all who are interested, which is open to all blockchain technologies, which is open to different type of users and different candidates. So we will see, and this is for us a very good example of private-public partnership on innovation.
Thank you. Stephen, do you see the stablecoin coming as a major fact in the regulation and in the market?
Well, I think a few remarks on this issue, Nicolas. First of all, I think it's, and I say that more as a consumer because payment issues is not in the mandate of ESMA. But I think it's important to realize is that on the consumer side, there are still issues around doing payments across border. I went on holiday last year to Croatia, relatively close by, part of the EU. You can see is that the exchange rate that you get at the ATM machine is 5% worse than, let's say, the interbank rate. I recently had to transfer some money for my daughter who's studying outside of the EU. You can see that with one push on the button, you lose a couple of €100 simply because of the transaction. I think that is important. So, and everywhere in a situation where the consumer can be improved, you know that there can be an opportunity. And we know that for the right reasons, as Francois explained, stable coins has been getting in much more difficult territory, but I think it's important to realize that that latent possibility to improve payments for consumers is still there. The other point, and it was also made by Francois, is what we have done more generally on the topic of crypto assets. What we have said, if it is like a financial instrument, it should be regulated like a financial instrument. We should not have any, there should be a level playing field between the technologies of incumbents and the newcomers. And therefore, when we gave our advice last year to the European Commission on crypto assets, there has been the development of these ICOs about, 1.5, 2 years ago. What we said there generally, if it has the same role and same function as a financial instrument, so if it's like a share that you get a certain return or you can profit from a returns at a later point in time, it's transferable, then it should be regulated like a financial instrument and there should be no, let's say, special regime or exemptions for crypto assets. Maybe final brief comment on the stablecoin and the Libra project, where we were mostly...
Yes.
Excuse
me, just before, and I turn to you back. Is it to say that same activity, same risk, same rule for the stablecoin? Is it the motto?
I would say the same function, the same role that it plays, then it should have so it should not depend on the precise technology used. That's the reason I use very high level wording. So if you get a certain right in the profits of a economic undertaking, that sounds like a share.
Okay.
And if it's transferable, then it should be regulated like shares because we can see the risk for consumers when they buy these financial instruments that they might not get, that they might be defrauded or that there might be deceit, that there might be misleading, etc. And in that sense, there should be the same treatment between new technologies and incumbent technologies.
Same activity, same risk, same rule?
I think this principle is very important. It doesn't depend on your legal incorporation. It depends on what you deliver and what you do. If not, we will not have a level playing field. And this would be also very dangerous for innovation.
Okay, going back to Libra, and the third question, which is, can big tech supersede traditional finance?
Just very shortly on Libra, where we as securities markets regulators were particularly focusing on was the fund that would be established that would back the stablecoin. That would be a big, that would be where the assets would be managed and that would be established in Switzerland. And the question, of course, is what kind of fund would that be? How would it be regulated, etc. So there was our interest. Then moving to the role that, let's say, big tech can play in financial services. And currently, if you see the current numbers, it's still it's relatively modest. I think it's, depending on where you measure precisely, it's around 10% of the big techs that the role that, or the revenues that they are gathering in the area of financial services. I would expect, with the caveat that we are bad predictors generally, is that indeed big tech can play a very important role here. They have the vast networks. They have the proximity to the consumer. They have the proximity.
They have the data
to the households. They have the data analytics, and so you can expect that they would play an important role. In Europe, it's been modest so far. But if you go, for example, to China, where there has been one of the largest money market funds, was at one point in time in China. It was from Ant Financial, and so you can see that important role going to be played by big tech. The first benefit, of course, from a market perspective would be the start of competition. We don't want to disrupt markets in the sense that it would cause stability concerns. But on the other hand, competition, I think, is healthy in terms of delivery. At the same time, we also know that those markets where big techs are dominant, that in itself will create at one point in time competition. And so I think that will be an issue around once it becomes a more mature role of the big techs in financial services. There will be issues around competition, but obviously also issues around data privacy, data ownership will play an important role.
When you say there will be a point about competition, do you mean that there is a risk on being too big and dominating the market?
Well, we can see that, so like currently the big techs play an important role, at least in the EU, in financial services. Yeah. I think it's healthy for financial market functioning that there is the competition also from the big techs. But we know from the areas where big techs are big is that there are all kinds of concerns.
A risk of monopoly.
You can see that our competition commissioner is struggling with that issue, with access to services that are provided by these big platforms, etc.
François? About big tech
big
and Libra. Why not?
About Libra, I will not add anything, but about big tech as a whole, they offer the same opportunities as fintechs, but they create probably additional challenges. And if you look at two fields where this disruption is obvious, because it's not only a change, it could be a huge disruption, payment system, and we are only at the start of the story. I agree on that. I expect significant disruption in the payment industry. And second, IT and the cloud, and where data are stored. Why do I say that they raise additional challenges? Because we should apply everything what we said earlier, same activity, same rule, etc. But there are three issues where we need international cooperation, and where this international cooperation is rather weak at present. It's not only about financial regulation, where we know how to work together at European and global level, but it's about competition, as you said, and there is a real risk that the winner takes all, which also increases the systemic financial stability risk. So it's not only a question of fair competition, it also raises financial stability risk. The second is data protection, obviously, and here Europe lies ahead with the GDPR. There is strong interest. 30 countries, Nicolas, outside of EU already adopt GDPR, but we have no international cooperation of data protection authorities. And third is obviously cybersecurity. So if we want to deal with the new challenges brought by the very certain arrival and development of big techs in the financial sector, we have to build a stronger international cooperation in these three fields.
Yes. Do you agree? Yes. Three fields? Yes. Yeah. Okay. François, the fourth question, how, as a supervisor or regulator, are you responding to these innovations, and what challenges and opportunities do you see?
The answer in one sentence, Nicolas, is where we have to change ourselves. The whole industry is changing, but so is the regulator and the supervisor. As I said, we are open. And if I have one message today, a very practical one, our door is open to you, my door is open. And you have probably this image that incumbents come very often to the supervisor. We have frequent meetings, and rightly so. But please don't hesitate. The Banque de France on the ACPR is also open to the request by fintechs. We will discuss. We will not always agree, which is also the case with incumbents, as a matter of fact. So openness. What do we do more to be completely in the game, as I said? First, we have to increase our own skills. It's obvious, but if I look at the people we hire at present, these are data scientists, these are cyber specialists, these are IT developers, etc. So it's not the kind of skills we recruited 20 years ago. Second, we develop experimentation. I mentioned the lab. We will develop experimentation for CDBC in the wholesale field. And here, clearly, we need a partnership with you, because it would be completely wrong to think that public authorities can innovate on a standalone basis. Having said that, we must, in this dialogue, find the right balance between development of innovation, which is absolutely key, and preservation of safety. It's why I strongly believe in forum dialogue, which we have to develop. We created this forum Fintech with AMF, Autorité des marchés financiers, market financial authorities. This is your parish, Stephen, so to say. We think it's very important to work together and to work with you. I believe in this balance. And I am very serious about that. You are not on one side innovation and we on the other side regulation supervision. We will do our job, and it's your long-term interest, but we will build this kind of bridge to develop the better of the two worlds.
Very clear, Professor Villard-Gallo. Stephen, do you agree with this kind of searching for a balance between those two different positions?
Yes, absolutely. And probably you would initially expect from a regulator probably to be biased towards focusing on the risks of new innovations, but it's really about a balanced approach. And the reason being is that we have seen in many parts of our lives how new technology has improved the services, has improved the quality of what you receive. And I think for securities markets regulators, there's, for example, issues around transparencies of financial products. If technology in some way can help to improve transparency, to result in lower cost of the products that are provided to the end investor, I think we would very much support that. So indeed, there is really this balanced view on this matter. And we have a dedicated team that goes across and screens the markets for new innovations and to assess to what extent can this new innovation, what are the risks, what are the benefits, and to what extent does it need an adjustment of the regulatory requirements, either to address risk, but possibly also to capture certain benefits. And so you will see with quite some regularity is that we give analyses and publish those around how new technologies fit into the regulatory framework. I should say, however, that we should not underestimate how regulatory dense the financial services are, and that is for a good reason, because we know that's an area where there are risks to investor protection, to stability, but again, that will be the same for incumbents, and we need to have a level playing field here. The final issue that I would like to mention, as the governor explained, of addressing new proposals and coming new proposals in terms of financial innovation. What we do at a European level is trying to coordinate that for securities markets across the EU, because typically a innovation is not bound to one country. And so you would like to roll this out across a couple of member states, but then you're confronted with the situation that in many areas, the entrance to the market is still done at a national level. And so we bring together the national regulators, discuss with them the cases of innovation that they are confronted with, applications for licenses, and try to ensure that there are consistent responses across the EU.
Okay, very clear. Thank you very much, Stephen Maillot. Maybe a last word, Professor Villard-Gallo.
Just to give Nicolas two illustrations of my general commitment about openness. Two things which we want to change this year. First, about authorizations for newcomers. we launched a review of our authorization process. We want to make it simpler, faster, and more digital for you. And we want to see with you concrete progresses till the end of this year. And second is about our internal work. You asked about our internal organization earlier.
Yes, in the Banque de
It's what
France.
we call, we speak about fintech today, but it's what we call in our world subtech or regtech. And these words are also promising. We initiated 4 concrete projects on AR and data analytics with startups. And we want to deliver concrete projects in our way of working. This is what we call subtech and regtech on this entrepreneurship basis till September. So we are committed to deliver.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Stephen Mayor and François Villeroy de Galhau.